Hi everyone, Tanchikiwao. Welcome to Full Circle's community conversation for tonight. We have a wonderful guest who I've had the pleasure of knowing for several years now. And I'm really excited to have her share some of her knowledge with all of you. So Kakeka Thundersky is a 26-year-old Anishinaabe former kid in care from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and she has roots in Poplar River First Nation, located in Treaty 5 territory. She's a mother, community organizer, and member of the Thunderbird clan, and I'm so thrilled to have her here with us tonight. So Kakeka, I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, thank you for that. So I guess I'll start by introducing myself. Anim Buju, Anishinaabe Koinendao, Kakeke Thundersky Dijnakas, Winnipeg Nadunji, Shegwa, Poplar River, Benesi Dodam. Hello, my name is Kakeke Thundersky. Basically just gonna repeat what Lucy had said. I am a 26-year-old former kid in care from Winnipeg with roots in Poplar River, which is located up in Treaty 5 territory. I'm a mother, community organizer, and member of the Thunderbird clan. So I'm actually have a PowerPoint that I made. Is it working? Just a thumbs up, yeah.
Looks great.
Can you see the Zoom thing on my screen, or do you just see the
No, we
whole?
just see just your PowerPoint slide. Looks great.
Okay, awesome. So this is working out greater than I thought it could have. So I'll get started here. So my presentation today is climate action and direct action supporting students and youth. How do I keep going? How do I go to the next slide? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Sorry. So just a quick agenda is I wanted to do some introductions, followed by a quick group discussion where maybe we'll go through some definitions together, maybe just in the chat for sake of time. I will go over a quick speed through run of history and who am I, and then we could finish off with some questions. So let me see here. I guess the icebreaker I wanted to ask is, where is home for you? So we could either do that like in the chat, or you could just unmute yourself and just say your name and where home is for you. I already said where my home was. So I don't know if anyone wants to go first.
I can share. So, Lucy, and my home is Winnipeg.
My name's Amy, and my home is 30 minutes west of Winnipeg between Eli and Portage La Prairie.
Some things from the chat, by the water, from Lorinda. Matt says nature is my home, anywhere outside with little to no city around. Dr. Laura, oop, they keep coming in. Treaty 1 territory and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Winnipeg. Nudimic, am I saying that right? Sorry. Winnipeg. I'm born and raised in Selkirk, Manitoba. Currently live in Petersfield, Manitoba. And Winnipeg. Give it a couple more minutes just to make sure we're not cutting anyone off. Feel free to unmute too and just share. I guess the people just joining, some people are still joining. In the chat, we're just starting off my presentation with an icebreaker of where is home for you. So if you want to drop that in the chat or unmute yourself, you can just feel free. Give it a couple more minutes. We'll move along. Zoom's always a little awkward for for icebreakers. Okay, so Winnipeg. Okay, guess we'll move along to the next slide I have. So with these next few slides, I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a discussion. We could do it this way as well, where you could unmute yourself and talk, or you could just talk in the chat if that's easier for you. For each words, we're not gonna go too long into them. I think maybe just about maybe 5 minutes each per word or less. But I just wanted us to get thinking about some things before I start speaking. Sorry, y'all. I'm super unprofessional and navigating a MacBook. I've never had a MacBook before. So the first word that I want us to maybe define as a group in the chat is colonialism. Or you can unmute yourself and just give a definition. Yeah, just first things that come into your mind, and it doesn't have to be super deep. Like I said, just quick definitions that we can come up with as a group.
Controlling and settling in another country.
Mm-hmm. In the group chat, I think it's just meeting chat, Facebook talk, gives me a picture in my head of a white European man. Me too. Embodied. Conforming. Anyone else want to add anything before we move on to the next word? Modern day slavery. Okay. So we'll move on. The next word is capitalism. What does capitalism mean? What do you think? What does it mean to you? What does it look like? How does it feel? What does it smell like? Anyone?
Profits over people.
Profits over people. Economic system. I can never say that word. Hierarchical.
Nice. Nailed it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I grew up with a lisp, so it's always a fun time. Read hierarchy, destruction of nature. Okay. I think we have a good idea, so we'll move on to the next word, which is patriarchy. What does patriarchy mean? And how does it present itself? Yep, men have power. Okay, well, since we just went over these three words, these are just some things to keep in mind when we're thinking about climate change and who is responsible for climate change. When we think about, colonialism, capitalism, and patriarchy, it's really important to keep those in mind when we're speaking about climate change, who is responsible, and like what caused it essentially. So it's, I just wanted to start off with these just so we could keep these in the back of our minds when we're thinking about land protection, when we're thinking about water and sky protection, and when we're thinking about, climate action and Indigenous people, standing up to fight back. So that went by a little bit quicker than I anticipated. So I'll just get started on the speaking portion. I'm gonna take a quick sip of my tea. I lost my voice recently. Let's get started on this. So I wanted to do a quick run through of history. And it's going to be very, very brief and just a couple of examples. And I just felt that it was important to understand and to start off with history and to understand that this work isn't new and it hasn't started with us and it won't end with us. And in terms of organizing, it's important to research history and to, recognize and respect who set down the groundwork and where we got, our tactics and our methods and our language from. So yeah, it's not going to be like a super boring history run through, just some quick examples of direct actions in Canada where Indigenous people have inserted their sovereignty. So this first one, oops. Oh, here's the little thing I made. On this timeline, it's just 4 examples in so-called Canada, but there are so many more. Like I said earlier, this work hasn't started with us, and it goes way before 1990, and it continued on after 1999. And even in between each example I gave, there are many, many more examples. And it even stretches beyond Canada. Like if we look down to the States, I'm calling in from, Rapid City, South Dakota right now, down on the reservation, there was, the Wounded Knee occupation in the 70s, and that's just in the States. So that's just another example. So the first one is, this is the Oka crisis, which was a 78-day-long crisis between the Mohawk and the RCMP over a land dispute of a proposed golf course on a Mohawk burial site. Started July 11th, 1990, and it ended September 26, 1990. And it was very publicized as a violent occupation, which many have condemned. However, many non-Indigenous and RCMP were inflicting violence and were giving threats of violence to the Mohawk during this time. And something to note about this too was across so-called Canada, there were many other actions in solidarity. This is Gustavus Lake standoff. This was a 31-day-long armed standoff between the Suquamish and the RCMP, starting August 18th, 1995, and ending September 17th, 1995. Indigenous people wanted to have a Sundance, and then tensions started after they received an eviction notice. They believed the ceremony and their ways of life were under attack, so they called for an armed resistance. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this was the last armed resistance in Canada. I might be wrong, so don't quote me on that. But I know that this one costed the government quite a bit of money. I think they had over like 400 RCMPs and cops deployed to handle this situation. This is the Ipperwash crisis in 1990. And it was a peaceful occupation led by Stony Point Ojibwe to assert claim to nearby land in Ipperwash Provincial Park, Ontario, which had been used as a training camp for the RCMP. The land had been stolen from them during World War II, and that led to an ongoing dispute, which eventually, resulted in a peaceful occupation starting September 4th, 1995, to raise awareness for the claim. Unfortunately, during this peaceful occupation, though, Dudley George was murdered by the RCMP. And this land, this land dispute lasted a long time after this crisis had happened. Something too I noticed was that there's a lot of crises. They're all called crises. And this last example is just quick. This is the Burnt Church crisis, where Mi'kmaq fishers, who were asserting fishing rights were met with violence from non-Indigenous fishermen. The Mi'kmaq held rights to catch and sell lobster during the off seasons. And the Supreme Court acknowledged that Donald Marshall Jr., who was a Mi'kmaq fisher, had the right to fish for eels off season. Non-Indigenous people didn't agree with this ruling, and on October 3rd, 1999, I think about 150, it said approximately, but I feel like, oh, I don't know, there's a documentary on it, it looked nuts. But boats came to protest the Mi'kmaq fishers. The protesters were violent and often, were injuring the Mi'kmaq fishers. Eventually, the court started taking away Mi'kmaq fishing rights, which led to a series of standoffs and arrests between Mi'kmaq fishers and the RCMP. To this day, many Mi'kmaq uphold their rights to fishing, regardless of any Supreme Court rulings. So with all these examples in mind and all, the examples I gave about, occupation and direct actions, I just want to leave you all with the question of, what is violence? Like, what do you consider violent? Maybe we can even chat about that in the chat too, if you want. Are blockades violent? Are statue topplings violent? Are occupations violent? Are the police violent? Is climate change violent? Is hindering Indigenous livelihoods violent? And, that's a huge conversation and a huge talking point that comes along with direct action is what is considered violent. Because for a lot of Indigenous people, toppling a statue isn't violent, but, apprehending children is. So maybe we could have a little discussion about that if y'all want in the chat take a couple minutes here, or I could keep moving on. You could also feel free to unmute yourself. I'm kind of going by this a little bit quicker than I thought. We could talk about what we think violence is, because, yeah.
For me, those are all really good examples of violence, and also like not standing up to colonialism and to these like infringements on Indigenous rights, Indigenous sovereignty. Like that's also to me violent to not push back against it and kind of like let it happen is for me a form of violence too.
Yeah, to sit there and be like compliant to it. Yeah. In the chat, it says violence is any aggressive act, the use of force.
I think when we're consistent and we do nothing, then perhaps we're not the aggressor, but we certainly are allowing it to happen to the bodies of people, to four-legged, two-legged, spirits, like everybody with words. If you say nothing, then we are part of that plan.
Yeah, I agree with that. And on this slide too, I put up a picture of the statue toppling. I think that was back in 2021 on July 1st, which is Canada Day. And this statue toppling was after the discovery of 215 unmarked graves at a residential school. And I use this picture specifically because a lot of people were saying that toppling that statue was violent. And a lot of people who didn't agree with it used it to condemn a lot of the Indigenous youth and Indigenous, warriors ultimately who, demonstrated this act of protest by saying that it was violent. But the argument always is, it's a statue, it's fine. But those children aren't. So I just wanted to use that as a picture for that. Also, I totally didn't know that was going to happen that day. And I was standing there holding my baby. She was a newborn at the time. And I remember we just watched it go down. I thought that was so awesome. I totally was not expecting that day. So that was pretty cool. And if no one else has anything else to say, I'll go to the next slides. Yeah. Okay. So this is Who Am I? This picture is really old and I can't even remember what it is, but I just used it because, like I said, I'm just a mess with this laptop. So my name is Kakeka Thundersky. I am 26 years old and I've been organizing on and off for a majority of my whole life, since I was a little girl. There's me, my siblings, and that's my mom back in the day. That was like, what, 2005? So that's my mom, and my mom was the chairperson for Sisters in Spirit Winnipeg chapter, which advocated for the families and victims of missing, murdered Indigenous women seeking justice. And she was involved in the I Don't Know More movement. So when I was younger, I did a lot of hoop dancing and giving a lot of speeches alongside my mom. So I kind of grew up in these spaces. The way I've shown up in these activist spaces, I guess, in the last few years has changed. It has greatly changed over time. From being a little girl, showing up in my regalia and hoop dancing to, standing in front lines it's a little bit of a jump. But growing up, the importance of being a good relative was something that my mom instilled in us. Growing up, I was taught that we have inherited rights to the land, but alongside these rights come the responsibility that we have to uphold as people of the land, and that is to always protect and nurture the land for those yet to come. I was always reminded of that, and that we have to hold ourselves accountable to these responsibilities, and that's something that I take very seriously. Um, and that just shows itself in the work that I've done, and in the circles that I've been privileged to sit in. My childhood was a little bit rocky, and I ended up in CFS away from my mother's influence, but her teachings were something that always had an impact on me, and they still do. When I was a teenager, I was organizing in my school with other Indigenous students, and it eventually led to out-of-school opportunities to learn what else was out there. To paint a picture, the time I was, in grade 12, it was when Orange Shirt Day was first starting here in our schools. Well, my school anyways. Standing Rock was going on, and we were still hearing the heartbeat of I Don't Know More. So when I was 16, I just started showing up everywhere by myself. I was kind of that awkward weird kid who kept popping up, but I was really good at solidifying my place in the community. And that's something that I think is important in doing the work, is establishing and maintaining, you know, uh, relationships with people. You have to build that on trust. And, you don't want someone to represent you who you don't know. It's fraudulent. And when I was in high school, I really had a lot of support from the adults in my life. There were several teachers who, kind of took notice of me and the other students I was organizing alongside with, and they would help us find different opportunities, whether or not that was within the school division or outside of it. And they would, always send them our way, recommend us, write letters of support, and try their best to, even like provide bus tickets if that's what they could do, or provide meals. And that definitely, changed how I was able to access these opportunities and resources when I was in school. And I remember I always feel really like lucky for that. Because the teachers, there were a few teachers who really gave us a lot of space and opportunities to learn and talk about these different spaces and these different things that were going on that were impacting us. So yeah, that was really dope and really cool. In my younger years, a lot of the work I was a part of was at a grassroots community level. The groups I found myself organizing with were youth-led. We had no funding, but yet we always found a way to organize, rally, and advocate for things we felt were very impactful to us as urban Indigenous youth. We organized outside of institutions on a ground level, meaning we don't need the police to keep us safe. We kept us safe. We didn't put politicians on pedestals, and we didn't rely on change from outside sources to sustain us. We would host weekly anti-violence community gatherings that were free and open to anyone and everyone. These gatherings started after the loss of an Indigenous youth in the community. And the thought of this organizing was that we shouldn't only be gathering at funerals, and that we deserve to take up space in our community just simply because it's our own. So the way we would organize was kind of like, I heard someone coin the term organized chaos. And that's essentially what it was. Like having no funding and not being part of anything like official, we would definitely rely on, just community and our connections. So if we knew someone who worked at this center, then we would go there. If we knew someone who had like access to food, or like eventually like Food Not Bombs started helping us out, just things like that. And that's really how we started organizing. And just through that, it kind of grew to a lot of more opportunities. And the gatherings reflected what was affecting us as urban Indigenous youth, and it would change based on the need and the necessity of the community. For example, one week we would highlight people doing work in the child welfare system, and then the next week we'd highlight people doing land defender work, such as, like the Stop Line 3 actions. And yeah, it was really just oriented around needs and things that we saw in the community. So it kind of grew into like a lot of other projects, language revitalization gatherings, child and family welfare advocacy, harm reduction initiatives, street ceremonies. If someone had an idea, we would all rally and try to make it work, supporting whatever capacity we could. We called the organizing work a movement work because it was constantly moving. It was never stagnant. And the movement work being done was reciprocal in that we were part of the work and part of the community, and the community was part of the work. So we'd like to try to, keep it open for everyone and anyone who wanted to be involved in whatever it is that we were doing. And we kind of had like a weird saying, like, do now, ask later. Like, I'm sure you've heard that, but we would always just say yes and then just try to figure out all the details later, which didn't always work. But luckily, there was just so many of us, and we were really well supported youth that a lot of times things would work out. Another thing too, how we organized was we kind of looked at it as geese, geese fly in a V. And then when the one in the front gets tired, it would go to the back and then push someone else forward. That was just to ensure that, none of us really got burnt out doing this work. So yeah, throughout that time though, we started, noticing a lot of like different opportunities coming up around land defense. And that was something that I was always super passionate about, was the environment, the land, the water, the sky, ensuring that our children's children have, a place like home. So then we started kind of organizing that way. Well, I did. Everyone kind of, it was like a choose your own adventure book. But that's how I really got like my foot in the community and started meeting people. So when I started hearing about, things like Standing Rock and Line 3, when I started hearing about what was happening on the West Coast, out on the Yinta, and when I started hearing about, the Trans Mountain Pipeline out in Saquamic Ulu, um, it really started to make me upset, and like I'm all the way over here and they're all the way over there. But something that was taught too is to meet your prayers halfway. So when they were doing calls to actions, like we didn't want to just sit around and, like pray on it. We had to meet them halfway. Um, so then we started doing, nonviolent direct action workshops and trainings, in Winnipeg. And we started hosting, actions in solidarity with, different, different movements across so-called Canada. And yeah, sorry, I need to figure out. Oh yeah, okay. Just another picture just of that. These pictures don't really line up with what I'm saying, but these are just some examples of some different things that we started doing. Me and my friends. Some really cool friends. So yeah, so what's it called? Sorry, I lost my place. So I carry the belief that blockades are necessary and that our silence is compliance. At the time, when we really started picking up gear into organizing, the Wet'suwet'en were facing immediate threats of, violence from so-called Canada for defending their territory against the CGL pipeline, the Coastal GasLink. And how I mentioned before, that seems so far away from us. Something that we started figuring out and realizing is that everything is connected closer to home than you think. The people who are in decision-making powers are all over so-called Canada, and they have offices all over so-called Canada. They have addresses, they don't just necessarily live right where they're causing all that harm, including Winnipeg. So in efforts of honoring our responsibility to be a good relative to our West Coast relatives, we answered their call to action and did a sit-in at Dan Vandel's office. I'm back. And we also did rallies. Oh, it's not going backwards. Okay, well, here's just some cool pictures. And then at that sit-in, that was where we tried to uplift the demands of the hereditary chiefs. At the time, this was called Shut Down Canada. We organized from coast to coast. Youth from all across so-called Canada organized from coast to coast. Not even just youth, like adults, I don't know, more members, warriors, many different Indigenous and non-Indigenous people were organizing simultaneously. They were organizing politician office sit-ins. That's what we do. That's what we did. There were bank lockdowns, railroad and highway blockades, occupations at legislative buildings, and they were all happening at the same time. So that was really a good time. And it was really strategic too. I know a lot of those railroads costed Canada, like billions of dollars, those railroad companies. All those sit-ins, we got like a lot of attention from people who were, influential in the pipelines. And during this time, we kind of created a collective called Indigenous Youth for Wet'suwet'en Solidarity. And because we wanted to build capacity amongst our peers and ourselves, so we could all have skills and knowledge to organize more actions in solidarity. We would always tell people, like, if you have like 5 friends, you could do a sit-in. So we started hosting NVDA trainings to better equip ourselves and peers to contribute to Shut Down Canada. To organize these trainings sessions, we relied heavily on past experiences and relationships we've built. We also, during this time, we really organized really strategically amongst ourselves and just kind of supported one another through word of mouth. Because that's the best way I find to organize. So throughout my organizing experiences, I've had the privilege to travel and to have built relationships and solidarity coast to coast of Soulful Canada, the States, and even further down south. And that's just a privilege that I hold. I'm really grateful for. We've gone down to other front lines and camps to stand in direct solidarity, such as, tiny house warriors who are defending Sokomakulu from the TMX pipeline, formerly known as Kinder Morgan, and the man camps that come with those projects. And, supported Camp Morningstar, which is a little closer to home, located just outside Hollow Water First Nation, who are facing the threat of a recently WOB Canoe approved CPS Canadian Premium Sand Silica Sand Mine. That's a mouthful. I'll re-say it. Recently approved CPS, which is Canadian Premium Sands Silica Sand Mine, which would bring health and environmental concerns to the people, the land, and the land of Hollow Water, and just overall, contribute to the detrimental health of Lake Winnipeg with its large basin of 1 million square kilometers. I don't know if y'all know that, but Lake Winnipeg is huge. I think it's the 11th largest lake in the world, and its basin is massive. So projects like those, would negatively impact that pretty severely. But that's a picture from the sit-in. This is a picture in front of the ledge. Here's just some examples at tiny house. See, and this one is at the MMF building. Can't remember what was going on here. And then a picture of us marching. So in recent times, I've taken a big step back, but I'm still around and working on small projects as I just had my second baby. Well, not just had, actually. She's going to be a year soon, or 11 months soon. But I believe that motherhood can be resistance too, raising the next generation in home with ceremony and with tradition. As a former kid in care, as the daughter of a day school survivor and the granddaughter of a residential school survivor, raising my daughter with culture and ceremony without state interference has become my number one priority in this life. And when I think about it, it always has been. All the work that we have done before I even became a mother was always for the next generation, was always for, those babies who are yet to be born. I remember when I had my first daughter, I was holding her and I thought about that. We were always talking about the babies and, getting the land back for the babies. And now here's a baby. And, she was just so cute and so sweet. And I just remember thinking, as adults, we have to do everything in our power to ensure that, the next generation, our children and our babies don't inherit this mess that, we've essentially created. And even if, we didn't create it, we need to try to stand up to it. We need to try to push back and say that we did everything that we could to try to ensure, a better future for them. So yeah, I think that's all I really have for my talking points. Something too that I wanted to say was I created just like a little PDF sheet with different recommendations of papers, books, podcasts, and films. And there's links on them too for some of the films and podcasts if you want. You could send me an email, your email in the chat, or you could send Lucy or whoever the email, and I could send them the PDF if you're interested. Yeah, and I put films on there and podcasts too in case you don't want to read a book or go out and buy a book. I don't have much book shoon at the moment. Um, but yeah, so Chimagwechan questions, and I'm sorry if some things were a little bit unclear. I'm a little bit frazzled because I lost my voice recently. So I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself in some parts. Um, yeah, if you want me to elaborate on anything, if you have any questions, but anything I may have word vomited, I can clarify, specify. Yeah.
Oh, this is awesome. Thank you so much, Kakeka. I always love hearing about all the work that you've done and um like years and years of work in community and for the people. So just like thank you for the work you do and also for coming and sharing it with us here. I'm not sure if anyone else has any questions I can ask one while we wait for folks to um come up with something, but I really liked that goose analogy you had about like pushing, like we can't always be the ones like leading the charge. We have to rotate and share that leadership. And I'm wondering if you have any um like lessons that you learned or ways that you learned that and like how you kind of do that self-care practice for yourself and for those babies that you have to take care of now as well. Not have to, get to, or honor to.
Yeah. Um, well, I guess some lessons about burnout was actually like before they were born even, I had like a bad habit of not saying no to anything because everything just sounded so interesting and so important and so cool, and I wanted to be a part of everything. But part of that, I think, stepping back and flying at the end of the V is kind of humbling yourself and realizing, like you don't have to be a part of everything. And if you need a break, the work will still be there and someone's always there to step up. So I definitely have been doing that this last couple of years with the babies and just, relaxing with them and just enjoying our time. Um, I was actually recently talking to someone about this, and I don't even know, I can't really explain it, but they asked me like how do you manage stress? And I just said I just don't think about things. Like I'll just go numb and like do dishes, And that's like kind of like I don't know, my self-care is just like cleaning and just not thinking. Um
Totally, I love that. And that's the videos and podcasts come in handy for me. Although usually I'm watching something really silly to really decompress my brain, but
Oh yeah, me too. I love reality TV. Like I'll rewatch Jersey Shore.
nice. Does anyone else have any questions for KKK?
We had already sort of mentioned some of the things that educators had done for you to help you in your journey, but we have a lot of educators here tonight. And I wondered if you could just reiterate like some things that they could start doing basically next week when they go, or it's Monday. I keep thinking it's Friday because I want it to be Friday, but it's Monday. And so when they go back to school this week, like what are some things that they can do in their classrooms that can help their students to do the work that you do?
Um, I'm not sure how old the students are, but I definitely think um just, like sharing different resources. Like I remember something that really helped radicalize some of us when we were in high school was a teacher showed the Oka documentary. And I remember that created a lot of discussion, and we talked about it a lot amongst ourselves and just relating it to, like modern day struggles, modern day, movements, and just, I guess keeping an eye out, like if there's students who are, interested in learning things, seeing if there's any, pre-existing opportunities in the community. There's always something going on. So just even offering, like different like posters or links to things that are happening. I remember that's how I got involved in a lot of things, was just seeing a poster that someone showed me and just going. Did we
Thank
have
you. I
any
was
more?
just gonna say the same thing. I really was wondering about your use of social media to communicate. Like you talked about different, like I like kind of like the term organized chaos, which made sense. But some of the events and rallies and things that you've attended, was social media like a part of that? Like how would you like with your different communications or just any way you could be communicating? And like you said, there might be a different leader at different times. I appreciated the geese analogy as well.
Yeah, I think social media played, like a huge role actually in organizing, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. People had to get really creative with their organizing. Um, but yeah, I think social media is probably like the number one tool that a lot of people use to get the word out. Because where else are you gonna reach, a lot of people? Um, and also even just watching different like live streams and different panels, a lot of times people will, record things. A lot of that too is based out of, like safety, like having different eyes, especially during, like say like raids of different camps or things. Um, so it's always a good tool to stay informed and to also, hold police and, I guess just the bad guys. I'm just kidding. But just to keep them, accountable. Um, so yeah, Instagram a lot. A lot of natives are on Facebook. I don't want to like stereotype, but native Facebook goes hard.
I wonder if you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the like language reclamation work that you do, and I'm just thinking about your babies and their names and like that kind of fight that you've had to do, and maybe that's also a way that educators can help support through that work. I don't know if you want to speak about that.
Yeah, a lot of the language uh reclamation work that I've been a part of is honestly just been like supporting other people doing work. I know that I'm not sure if it's still going on, but there were initiatives in Winnipeg like Speak Cree and Anishinaabe Wataswan, where they had language circles every week where anyone of any level of fluency could show up and just practice. I'm not sure if those are still going on or not, but that was mainly just it. But a lot of the work that I have done has been like just on myself and my personal life and in my family. So my name's Kakeka, which means forever in Ojibwe. And it was really important to me growing up that if I ever had children, that I wanted them to have names in their language and the language that, their grandmothers spoke. So my oldest daughter, her name is Tokala Wachiwi, which means dancing kit fox woman. And then my youngest is Udafli Kagagi, which is actually two languages. The first one, Udafli, means mistletoe, and then her middle name is Raven. And we named her that because she was born around Christmas, and my mother passed away around Christmas. So my mom's name was Raven, so we gave her the middle name Raven. So mistletoe Raven, and then Tokala. And when they were first born, we kind of had the fight. Well, when Tokala was born, we kind of had the fight um, with, the governments on their birth certificates and their names because they didn't want to put Tokala Wachinwi as her first name. They wanted to break it up, but it's two different, like, it's not two different names, it's one name. Um, so we kind of had the fight with that. And at the time, there were several other babies born whose birth certificates also got messed up. So it was kind of like a thing at the time. Um, I also got a direct message. I don't know if you just wanted me to just send that to you or say it loud, but or I guess I'll just say it. I'm not gonna say name. Examples of Instagrams or TikToks to watch. Let's see here if I can find. CM Hamilton's a good TikTok. Could plug a few people in. And I'll just send it in the chat. Let me see, what is their at? CM's a good one. They do a lot of like land defense work on the West Coast, and a lot of work in the missing, murdered Indigenous women. Cree Nomad on TikTok is, yeah, they're a great person to follow too, and they just wrote a book, and I'm pretty sure they're younger than me. So actually I'm getting kind of old now.
I know that like awkward like getting out of the youth category, hey?
Yeah, I don't know where I sit. Tomas Lopez in the States. He posts a lot about things going on in the States. Yeah, my mind's drawing a blank right now, but I'll just keep writing them.
And once you start following a few, the algorithm will help you. The algorithm will
bring
put
you
you,
to them.
yeah.
And even also just like following orgs too. Like Indian Collective, they're based out of the States though. There's also Indigenous Climate Action. They're based in Canada. The Lake Winnipeg Indigenous Collective, that one's a little bit closer to home, and they focus on the health of Lake Winnipeg. A little bit biased, I used to work for them, and it was like the greatest job of my life. It was amazing. I loved it there.
Amazing. Any last questions for Kakeka? If not, I'll just say thank you so much for your time and your generosity of spirit to share all of this with us, this important work and these things that I think teachers need to know, that like so many youth in their classrooms are doing this work, whether in big ways or in small ways. And so making sure that we can like support and make sure that youth feel that they, you know, can be themselves in all places and don't have to kind of hide one part of themselves to be in school and be someone else outside, I think is really important as well. So thank you so much, Miigwech Kakeka, for coming. We'll do the silent Zoom round of applause. But if folks want to reach out to you afterwards, maybe would you be able to send that PDF my way and I can send it out to folks who
Yeah.
ask? Does that work?
Yeah, I'll just send
Okay.
it to you.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Yeah.
Give those
And-
babies a big hug.
Yeah, they're out of sweat right now.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, just thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
I'll
night,
leave
everyone.
now.